I used to believe that love, real love, was something you could feel in your bones. The kind of certainty that made you laugh at stories about betrayal, because you were sure they would never happen to you. That's who I was. I trusted my husband completely. Not blindly, or so I thought, but with the calm confidence of a woman who believed she had chosen well. We had been married for 11 years. 11 years of routines, shared jokes, late-night conversations in bed, and promises whispered in moments when the world felt quiet and safe. He was the man I defended when friends complained about their husbands, the man I mentioned proudly when people asked about my marriage. I thought I knew him. Every morning, he kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Every night, he asked about my day, or at least pretended to listen well enough that I never questioned it. On weekends, we cooked together, watched movies, planned future trips we kept postponing. From the outside, we were solid, stable, boring in the best possible way. And I loved that. Because stability felt like success. I remember telling myself, this is what people mean when they say marriage takes work. Not fireworks every day, but loyalty, consistency, and trust. What I didn't know was that while I was building a life with him, he was quietly building another version of himself, one I had never met. The first crack didn't come with screaming or obvious signs. It came disguised as something harmless: distance. At first, it was subtle. He started coming home later than usual, blaming work deadlines and unexpected meetings. His phone was always face down on the table now, not hidden, just turned away. When I asked questions, he answered quickly, too quickly. And I believed him. Because when you love someone, your brain doesn't look for danger. It looks for explanations that protect your peace. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself marriage wasn't supposed to feel exciting all the time. That comfort sometimes looks like silence. That trust means not interrogating the person you love. So I stayed quiet. And silence, I would later learn, is exactly where betrayal grows best. There were nights when he lay next to me, scrolling through his phone while I pretended to sleep. I could feel the glow of the screen against the wall. I could hear the faint tapping of his fingers. Once, I turned over suddenly, and he nearly dropped it. He laughed it off. I laughed too. But something inside me didn't. Still, I chose to believe the version of him I had known for over a decade, not the doubts forming in my chest. I chose memories over instincts. Because admitting suspicion felt like admitting failure, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. What I didn't know was that the universe had already started watching, and karma, quiet, patient karma, had just begun setting the stage. I had no idea that the smallest lie I ignored would soon unravel everything I believed about my marriage, and about the man sleeping beside me. If I'm being honest, the doubts didn't arrive like a storm. They arrived like dust, so light at first that I barely noticed them settling into my thoughts. But once they were there, they never truly left. After that night, the night he almost dropped his phone, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. Not because I wanted to spy on him, but because something inside me had quietly shifted. He wasn't doing anything obviously wrong. And that was the problem. The lies weren't dramatic. They were small, polite, almost considerate. I'm just exhausted. Work's been insane lately. I didn't hear my phone, sorry. All reasonable, all believable. But somehow, they didn't land the same way they used to. I noticed how he showered immediately after coming home, how his cologne seemed stronger than usual, how he started dressing better for work on days when there were supposedly no meetings. Once I joked, "Who are you trying to impress?" He smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That was new. Before, when he smiled at me, it felt like warmth, familiar, safe. Now it felt practiced. One evening, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in his pocket. It was from a restaurant we had never been to together. A place across town, not near his office, not near our home. 2 meals, 2 drinks. I stood there holding that piece of paper longer than I should have. Maybe he went with coworkers. Maybe it was a business lunch. Maybe I was overthinking. I folded the receipt back into his pocket, because deep down, I wasn't ready to open doors I couldn't close. That night, I lay awake, listening to his breathing. Steady, calm, as if nothing in the world was wrong. I wondered how someone could look so peaceful while lying beside a woman who trusted him with her entire life. That question haunted me. Days passed, then weeks. And the distance between us became something I could feel physically, like an invisible wall growing thicker every time I chose not to speak. I tried to reconnect. I planned dinners. I suggested date nights. I reached for his hand in the car. Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he didn't. And every time he pulled away just slightly, a voice in my head whispered, "This isn't normal." One afternoon, I called him during my lunch break. No answer. I didn't panic. He was probably busy. 10 minutes later, I checked his location, something we had always shared freely. His phone showed him at work, but something made me check again. Still at work. I checked a third time. Same place. Later that evening, casually, I asked how his day went. "Long," he said. "Meetings all afternoon." I nodded. But that word stayed with me. Meetings. Because I had driven past his office that afternoon. And his car wasn't there. I didn't confront him. Not then. Because confronting someone means you're prepared for the truth, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to hear it. So instead, I did what many women do when their intuition screams and their heart begs for silence. I minimized. I blamed stress. I blamed routine. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't exciting anymore. Maybe marriage had made us boring. Maybe this was just a phase. But at night, when I closed my eyes, the same question echoed over and over. Why does love suddenly feel like something I have to compete for? I didn't know it yet. But the lies were no longer quiet. They were just waiting for the right moment to speak. The next sign wouldn't be something I could explain away. And once I saw it, there would be no turning back. There's a moment in every story of betrayal when the truth doesn't fully reveal itself, but it clears its throat. That moment came for me on a Tuesday I almost forgot. It was an ordinary day, the kind that passes without ceremony. I was cleaning the house, trying to distract myself from the growing heaviness in my chest, when his phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. He had left it there by accident. That alone was unusual. Normally, his phone never left his side, not even when he showered. But this time, it buzzed softly, face up, the screen lighting the room. I wasn't trying to look. I swear that. But when a name appeared on the screen, a name I didn't recognize, my eyes read it before my mind could stop them. Lena. A blue heart. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was a coworker, a friend, someone new at the office. But the heart? That wasn't professional. The phone buzzed again, and again. I didn't touch it. I didn't open the message. I didn't read anything beyond that name. Because some part of me knew that once I crossed that line, I would never be the same. When he came home later that evening, I watched him carefully. He picked up his phone almost immediately, turning his body slightly away from me as he checked the screen. I asked, trying to sound casual, "Who's Lena?" The question hung in the air longer than it should have. He blinked, just once. "She's new at work," he said. "Too fast. Marketing. Needs help settling in." I nodded, but something inside me screamed. Because if there's one thing you learn when someone lies to you after years of honesty, it's that lies have a different texture. They feel rushed, polished, rehearsed. That night, He was unusually affectionate. He hugged me longer, kissed me more, told me he loved me twice before bed, and that scared me more than if he had done nothing at all. Affection, I would later realize, is often used as a distraction. The next few days, I noticed how often her name appeared on his phone. Always with that blue heart. Always quickly hidden. Once I walked into the room unexpectedly, and he locked his screen so fast it made a sound. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, forcing a laugh. "You scared me." I apologized. For existing in my own house. That was the moment I should have stopped ignoring the red flag waving right in front of me. But I didn't, because admitting the truth would have meant admitting that my marriage, the life I built, was cracking in ways I couldn't fix. So I chose denial. I convinced myself I was insecure, paranoid, dramatic. I even Googled articles about overthinking and long-term marriages. They told me what I wanted to hear. That trust means giving the benefit of the doubt. That suspicion can destroy love faster than truth. That sometimes fear creates monsters where none exist. So I stayed silent. Again. But silence doesn't make red flags disappear. It just teaches the liar how far they can go. One night, as he slept beside me, his phone lit up again on the nightstand. "I miss you already." This time, I saw more than just a name. My hands trembled. I didn't wake him. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing something that would change everything. I was no longer married to the man I thought I was. And yet, I still wasn't ready to face him. Not yet, because part of me hoped, desperately, that if I waited long enough, the truth might somehow hurt less. It wouldn't. What I found next wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was proof. And once I saw it, there was no pretending anymore. There are nights that divide your life into two versions. Before and after. That night started like any other. We ate dinner in silence, the kind that had become normal between us. The television played in the background, filling the space where conversation used to live. He laughed at something on the screen. I smiled when it felt expected. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. Inside me, everything was screaming. After dinner, he said he needed to step out for a bit. "Just a quick drive," he explained. "I need air." I watched him grab his keys, no jacket, phone already in hand, too eager. "Now?" I asked. He paused, just for a second. "Yeah," he said. "I won't be long." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and suddenly the house felt enormous. I sat on the couch, staring at the dark screen of the TV, replaying every moment from the past few weeks, every lie, every excuse, every time I had chosen peace over truth. Something inside me finally snapped. Not anger, clarity. I walked to the bedroom and stood beside the nightstand where he usually charged his phone. Tonight, for once, it wasn't there, but his tablet was. Unlocked. My heart pounded so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it. I told myself I was just checking the time. That was the lie I told myself. The messages were open. I didn't have to search. There she was. Lena. Blue heart and all. I scrolled. Slowly at first, then faster. Messages stretched back weeks, then months, inside jokes, complaints about work, compliments that made my stomach turn. Then words that no married woman should ever read on her husband's screen. "I wish I was waking up next to you. Soon we won't have to hide. I've never felt this connected to anyone." My hands shook. This wasn't flirting. This was a relationship. I read about the lunches, the late meetings, the drives, the lies. And then I saw the message that broke something inside me permanently. "I love you." Time-stamped 2 nights earlier, the night he had kissed my forehead and told me he was tired. I didn't cry. Not yet. I sat on the bed, numb, as if my body had disconnected from my heart to protect itself. When I heard the door open downstairs, I closed the tablet and placed it exactly where it had been. My legs felt weak as I walked back to the living room. He looked at me differently when he came in, like someone checking to see if a secret was still safe. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And for the first time in our marriage, I lied to him. That night, he fell asleep quickly. I stayed awake, staring into the darkness, replaying every message in my mind. Not just the words, but the ease with which he had written them, as if I was already a memory. I realized something terrifying. He wasn't planning to stop. He was planning to replace me. But what he didn't know was that karma had just been invited into our story, and once it arrives, it never leaves quietly. The next morning, I would discover that their secret wasn't as hidden as they believed, and that the consequences were already beginning. I thought I had already seen the worst of it. I was wrong. Morning came without warning. Sunlight crept through the curtains like it had every other day of our marriage, indifferent to the fact that my entire world had cracked open during the night. He kissed me goodbye before leaving for work, just like always. And I stood there, frozen, watching the door close behind him, realizing how easy it was for him to pretend. Or maybe it wasn't pretending at all. Maybe I was the one who had become invisible. After he left, the silence in the house felt unbearable. I needed proof, not because I didn't believe what I had seen, but because my mind was still looking for a way to deny it. So I did something I had never done in 11 years of marriage. I searched. I opened drawers I had never opened before, checked pockets I had never questioned, looked inside places where trust used to live. In the trunk of his car, hidden beneath a folded jacket, I found a small gift bag. Inside was a necklace, delicate, silver, new. Not my style, not my birthday, not our anniversary, not any occasion that made sense. My hands trembled as I held it. There was a receipt. Her name was printed on it. Lena. That was the moment denial died. I sat in the driver's seat, clutching the necklace, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Clarity. Back inside the house, I noticed details I had ignored for months. The sudden interest in fitness, the new playlists on his phone, the password he had recently changed, something we had promised never to do. Each detail, insignificant alone, devastating together. I opened his laptop. At first, nothing. Then I checked the trash folder. Photos, not explicit, but intimate enough to shatter me. Her smile, her hand resting on his arm. A mirror selfie I recognized immediately. It was taken in our bathroom. I stared at the tiles behind them. My tiles. My home. That was when I finally cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just silent tears sliding down my face as I realized how deeply I had been erased from my own life. But beneath the grief, something else was forming. Anger. Not the explosive kind. The quiet, focused kind. The kind that sharpens your senses and forces you to see clearly. I stopped crying and wiped my face. Because now I understood something important. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a choice, repeated every day, to lie, to betray, to disrespect the woman who had stood beside him for over a decade. And karma? Karma doesn't rush. It waits. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification from a number I didn't recognize. "I think you deserve to know the truth." My heart skipped. I didn't reply immediately. I stared at the screen, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. And somewhere deep inside, I felt it. The first ripple, the beginning of his fall. The message I received next wouldn't just expose his affair, it would set karma into motion faster than I ever imagined. I stared at my phone for a long time before answering. "I think you deserve to know the truth." Those words carried weight, not just because of what they implied, but because someone else had finally stepped into the story. I typed back slowly. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "My name is Rachel. I work with your husband." My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. She wasn't Lena, which meant this wasn't just between 3 people anymore. "I didn't know he was married at first," she continued, "but when I found out, things stopped feeling right." I sat down on the edge of the bed, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Rachel told me everything. How she had noticed the way he talked about Lena at work, how he defended her too passionately, how people had started to whisper, how he claimed his marriage was basically over. That sentence cut deeper than anything else. Basically over, while I was still fighting to save it. Rachel said Lena believed they were building a future together, that he had promised to leave me, that he had complained about me being cold, distant, too focused on routine. I had been living in a story he rewrote behind my back. And then Rachel said something that made my blood run cold. They were reported to HR. I froze. She explained that someone had filed a complaint, not about the affair itself, but about favoritism. Lena had received promotions, flexible hours, and privileges others didn't. Privileges earned in secret. "An investigation started last week," she wrote. "He doesn't know yet how serious it is." I closed my eyes. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt something other than pain. Relief. Not because he was suffering, but because the truth was finally bigger than his lies. That evening, he came home later than usual. His confidence was gone. He looked distracted, tense. His phone buzzed constantly, and this time he didn't bother hiding it. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated. "Work stuff," he said. "Just stress." I nodded. But inside, I smiled. Because now I knew. And he didn't know that I knew. That night, his sleep was restless. He tossed and turned, muttering under his breath. At one point, he sat up suddenly, checking his phone like someone expecting bad news. I watched him from the darkness. 11 years of marriage had taught me his tells, and fear was written all over him. Karma doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives quietly, with emails, with meetings, with consequences you can't charm your way out of, and for the first time. I wasn't chasing the truth anymore. The truth was chasing him. The next confrontation wouldn't be about love or forgiveness. It would be about survival, and he was already losing. I didn't plan the confrontation. It planned itself. The next evening, he walked through the door looking like a man carrying a weight he couldn't name. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. He barely looked at me before heading toward the kitchen. "Can we talk?" I asked. He froze, just for a second. Then he nodded, slowly, like someone bracing for impact. We sat at the dining table, the same one where we had celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, the same place where we had once planned our future. Now it felt like neutral ground. "I know about Lena," I said. No accusations, no raised voice, just truth. His face drained of color. For a moment, I thought he might finally be honest. Instead, he sighed. "It's not what you think." That sentence, the universal anthem of guilty men. I stayed quiet. Silence makes liars uncomfortable. "She's just someone I connected with at work," he continued. "Things got complicated, that's all." I slid the receipt across the table, then the necklace, then my phone, open to the message that said "I love you." Each item landed between us like a verdict. He swallowed hard. "Okay," he admitted. "Yes." I crossed a line. Crossed a line, as if betrayal were a single misstep instead of 1,000 deliberate choices. "But it didn't mean anything," he rushed. "It was just an escape. I was feeling lost. You and we've been distant." There it was, the blame. I waited for the apology that never came. Instead, He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face like the victim of a misunderstanding. "You've changed," he said. "You're not the same woman you used to be." I felt something settle inside me then. Not sadness, freedom. Because when someone shows you exactly how little they respect you, the illusion finally breaks. "I didn't cheat," I said quietly. "You did." He looked at me, genuinely shocked, as if he had expected tears, begging, forgiveness. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he snapped. "Work is insane. Everyone expects things from me. I just needed something that felt easy. Easy." I thought about the 11 years I had stood beside him, the sacrifices, the compromises, the loyalty. Easy had never been something I asked for. "Do you love her?" I asked. He hesitated too long. "That's not fair," he said. That was all the answer I needed. I stood up. "I know about HR," I added calmly. His eyes widened. "You talked to someone?" he demanded. I smiled. Not everything stays hidden forever. That night he didn't sleep in our bed, and for the first time, the house felt peaceful, because denial can only protect a lie for so long, and his was already collapsing. What he didn't realize was that the confrontation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything he was about to lose. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. He avoided me, spent hours on his phone, left the house early, came back late. When we crossed paths, there was a tension in the air. The kind that hums just beneath the surface, waiting to explode. But I didn't chase him. I didn't ask questions, because I already knew something he didn't want to believe yet. The truth had escaped his control. 3 days later, he came home earlier than usual. That alone told me everything. He dropped his keys on the counter harder than necessary and stood there, staring at nothing. "They put me on leave," he said. I turned slowly. "Temporary," he added quickly. "Just while they review things." "Review," the word tasted familiar. "They're investigating the complaints," he continued. "It's standard procedure." But his hands were shaking. "What complaints?" I asked. He looked at me sharply. "You know exactly what." I nodded, and that's when the anger finally broke through his fear. "She ruined everything," he snapped. "Lena. She pushed too hard. She wanted more. I told her to be patient." So now it was her fault. Not the lies, not the affair, not the abuse of power, just the woman who believed his promises. That night, his phone rang. I watched his face change as he answered it. Short answers, no confidence. A long pause. When he hung up, he sank into a chair. "They froze my access," he whispered. "Email, systems, everything." That was when it hit him. This wasn't something he could charm his way out of. The next morning, his name disappeared from the company website. By the end of the week, Lena's desk was empty. And suddenly, the fantasy they had built together collapsed under the weight of reality. He tried to talk to me then. Apologize, explain, negotiate. "I made a mistake," he said. "But we can fix this. We have history. History doesn't erase betrayal. I need your support," he added quietly, "just until this blows over." I looked at him and realized something chilling. He didn't want me back. He wanted a safety net. And karma had only just begun. As his professional life crumbled, his personal one was next. And this time, there would be no one left to blame. Losing his job shook him. But losing people? That's what broke him. At first, he tried to pretend nothing had changed. He woke up at the same time, put on his work clothes out of habit, left the house and sat in his car for long minutes, scrolling through his phone like someone waiting for instructions, waiting for someone to save him. But no one came. The calls he used to get stopped. The messages dried up. Friends from work suddenly had busy schedules. Invitations disappeared. And Lena? She vanished. One night, after too many drinks, he finally said her name out loud. "She won't answer me," he muttered. "She blocked me everywhere." Of course she did. The fantasy had only survived while he was powerful, while he had a job, while promises felt possible. Without that, there was nothing left. I watched him unravel slowly, not with satisfaction, with distance. Because once betrayal strips away respect, love doesn't die loudly. It fades. One afternoon, his sister called. I heard his voice change when he answered. The defensiveness, the excuses. Later, I learned she knew everything. So did his parents. And they weren't on his side. "They're disappointed," he told me bitterly. "They think I ruined everything." This time, I didn't correct him. Because he had. He tried to reconnect with me then. Not romantically, but desperately. He cooked dinner, bought flowers, brought up memories like they were bargaining chips. "Remember when we drove across the state with no plan? Remember how we used to laugh?" I remembered. But memory isn't enough to rebuild trust. One evening, he sat across from me, eyes red, voice shaking. "I don't have anyone else," he said. "You're all I have." And that was the moment I realized something heartbreaking. He didn't miss me. He missed being safe. And karma? Karma had taken away every place he thought he could land. What he didn't know was that his final loss wouldn't be his job, his family, or his lover. It would be me. I didn't leave in a dramatic way. There were no suitcases thrown across the room, no screaming matches, no final speeches rehearsed in the mirror. Just a decision. Quiet, firm, irreversible. It happened on a morning that felt almost peaceful. He was asleep on the couch, an empty glass on the table, the television still glowing from whatever he had watched all night. I stood there for a moment, looking at the man I once thought I would grow old with, and I felt nothing. That's how I knew. I had already separated my finances weeks earlier, changed passwords, made copies of documents, met with a lawyer without telling anyone, not out of revenge, out of self-respect. When he woke up and saw the envelope on the table, he knew. "What's this?" he asked, voice thick with sleep. "Divorce papers," I said. He laughed at first, then he saw my face. "You can't do this now," he said. "I'm already losing everything." That was the irony. I wasn't doing this to him. I was doing this for me. "You promised you'd try," he said, panic creeping into his voice. "You said we could fix it." "I promised loyalty," I replied. "You broke it." He begged then, not beautifully, not sincerely, desperately. "I don't know who I am without you," he whispered. I looked at him and realized how true that was. But it wasn't my responsibility to rebuild a man who destroyed our marriage. That afternoon, I packed only what mattered. And when I closed the door behind me, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time, karma wasn't just punishing him. It was freeing me. I thought the story was over, but karma wasn't done yet. Not even close. After I left, I made a promise to myself. I would not become the kind of woman who watches the ruins of someone else's life just to feel validated. So I didn't stalk his social media. I didn't ask friends for updates. I didn't measure my healing by how badly he was doing. And yet, karma has a way of letting you know when its work is complete. The first sign came through people who didn't even realize they were carrying news. A mutual friend mentioned his name cautiously, like someone stepping around broken glass. "I ran into him last week," she said. "He didn't look well." I nodded. I wasn't surprised. When a man builds his confidence on lies, the fall always leaves him hollow. Little by little, the truth surfaced in pieces. The investigation at work didn't end quietly. HR concluded that the relationship hadn't just been inappropriate, it had been unethical. Favoritism, abuse of authority, repeated violations. He lost more than a job. He lost credibility. In his field, reputation was everything. And once it cracked, it didn't heal. I heard he sent out dozens of resumes, customized cover letters, follow-up emails, silence. The same silence he once used to protect his affair now followed him everywhere. The irony didn't escape me. Then came the family fallout. His parents, who had always welcomed me like a daughter, stopped calling him daily. His sister refused to let him visit until he sorted himself out. For the first time in his life, there was no one rushing to fix things for him. No one making excuses. No one cushioning the consequences. And Lena? She didn't stay. The moment the investigation turned serious, she distanced herself, changed departments, then cities. The future he had promised her evaporated overnight. She hadn't fallen in love with a man. She had fallen in love with his position, his confidence, his illusion of control. Once that disappeared, so did she. That loss hit him harder than the job. Because suddenly, the affair that destroyed his marriage had nothing to show for it. No happy ending, no new beginning, just wreckage. Months passed. I moved on quietly. New apartment, new routines, new energy. And then, one evening, his name appeared on my phone. I stared at it for a long time before answering. His voice sounded different, smaller, slower, stripped of the certainty that once filled every sentence. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just needed you to know. I finally understand." I stayed silent. "I thought I was in control," he continued, "of my life, of my choices, of people. But I wasn't." No, he wasn't. He had been running. From responsibility. From honesty. From himself. "I lost everything," he whispered. And for a brief moment, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Compassion. But compassion doesn't mean reconciliation. And empathy doesn't mean erasing boundaries. "I hope you learn from this," I said calmly. And I meant it. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Not because I was sad, but because I realized something profound. Karma hadn't destroyed him. It had simply removed every lie he used to hide behind. What remained was who he truly was. And I no longer needed to be part of that story. For a long time, I thought the end of my marriage would be the end of me. Not in an obvious way, not dramatic, not visible to others, but quietly. Like a light dimming so slowly you don't realize you're standing in the dark. I carried the betrayal with me everywhere. In the way I hesitated before trusting anyone. In the way I questioned my own memories. In the way silence felt heavier than words. Healing didn't arrive with clarity or relief. It arrived with exhaustion. The kind that forces you to stop pretending you're okay. I remember the first night I slept alone in my new apartment. The walls felt unfamiliar. The silence felt louder than anything I had ever known. And yet, it was honest. No lies hiding in corners. No secrets vibrating on a phone screen. No version of love that asked me to shrink. That night, I cried. Not because I missed him, but because I finally let myself grieve the woman I had been before the betrayal. The woman who trusted without fear. Slowly, something shifted. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, searching for moments I could have changed. I stopped asking myself what I could have done differently. Because betrayal is not a misunderstanding. It is a decision. And once I accepted that, the weight began to lift. I started doing things alone. Simple things at first. Morning walks, coffee in silence, long drives without a destination. I learned how to sit with myself without distraction. And in that stillness, I met a version of me I had neglected for years. Stronger. More aware. Unwilling to accept less than respect. I learned that love doesn't demand silence. It doesn't ask you to ignore your intuition. It doesn't punish you for asking questions. True love feels steady, not confusing. Months passed, then a year, and one day, without warning, I realized I hadn't thought about him at all. Not with anger, not with sadness, not even with curiosity. He had become a closed chapter, and in that realization, I understood the most important truth of all. Karma didn't just work fast, it worked accurately. He lost what he took for granted. I gained what I had abandoned, myself. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who knows her worth. A woman who will never confuse attention with love or consistency with boredom. A woman who understands that endings are not failures. They are redirections. If you're listening to this story and you're standing at the edge of your own breaking point, hear me. You are not weak for staying. You are not foolish for believing. And you are not broken because someone chose to betray you. Sometimes, the most painful chapters exist only to introduce you to the strongest version of yourself. You didn't lose love. You lost an illusion. And in its place, you found truth. If this story resonated with you, take a moment. Subscribe for more real stories of karma and emotional rebirth. Like this video if you believe that truth always finds its way to the surface. And share it with someone who needs to remember their worth, because karma doesn't miss, and healing always begins the moment you choose yourself.